take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
CannabisRadio.com presents The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Hey, this is great, man.
Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Tuesday, March 8th, 2016, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Thanks for joining us for another episode of The Russ Belville Show, live here on CannabisRadio.com. Got a great show for you today if you're interested in the ever-expanding world of industrial hemp. I know usually we save our hemp stories for Wednesday and our Hemp Day Hump Day, but we're going to give Doug Fine the break this week and bring him on next week because today we've got one of my favorite people from Washington State. Joy Beckerman will be joining us. She's from Hemp Ace International and one of the normal women of Washington. She's going to join us at 5:30 with an activist agenda to tell us all about the brand new industrial hemp law that has been passed and signed in Washington State so they can begin producing hemp there as well. And we'll see if she's got more updates for us for the rest of the Pacific Northwest with what's going on in Oregon as well. Also on the show today, we'll have time for a radical rant where I gotta address a piece that I saw in the Phoenix New Times. Ray Stern is a reporter down there who's been writing for the New Times on the cannabis beat for quite a while. And it turns out that the true legalizers, the stoners against legalization down there in Arizona, are giving him a lot of flack, so much so he had to write an article about it today. And I'm going to address that in a rant that I call the only ulterior motive for supporting legalization. Also on the show today, we'll have time to do some drug war data mining where we're taking a look at the political donations made by the political action committees of the big four marijuana legalization reform organizations. That would be Drug Policy Alliance, Marijuana Policy Project, NORML, and the National Cannabis Industry Association. The International Business Times has got an article on this where it asks the question about why is there so much donation for Rand Paul, who is now out of the race, and so little donation for Bernie Sanders, the presidential candidate in the race who has promised to do more for the marijuana reform movement than even Rand Paul had considered. So we'll get into that, look deep into the numbers in our drug war data mining. In Behind the Headlines today, we're going to take a look at one of the least pot-friendly states in the United States. That would be the state of Iowa, where there's some new poll numbers out that show a remarkable change in the hearts and minds of Iowans when it comes at least to medical marijuana, but even some progress on recreational marijuana as well. So that's coming up in Behind the Headlines, and that, of course, is right after our first segment, the Cannabis Radio News. And in the headlines today, we take a look at what a Massachusetts state committee thought of their tour of Colorado's legalization on the eve of their potential marijuana legalization initiative this November. We're going to take a look at Utah, where activists are fighting to replace recalcitrant state legislators who oppose medical marijuana. We're going to have more research on medical marijuana and pregnant women coming out of Colorado. We'll give you the details. In Buffalo, New York, activists there are fighting for the decriminalization of marijuana. And in Colorado Springs, we've got an update on the legality of cannabis clubs in that city. All that's coming up in hour one of the Russ Belville Show. Then stay tuned for hour two, Toker Talk Radio. We'll take your calls at 971-533-7111 live if you've got any comments, questions, concerns, or criticisms. We're also going to talk about all sorts of interesting stories out there. The end of the Cannabis Cafe here in Portland, Oregon. The First Church of Cannabis in Indiana. We're going to talk about how people who use other drugs, what they think of cannabis, and pot versus liquor in Aspen, Colorado.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
The next generation of vaporizers has arrived. Vuber vaporizers are blazing the way with unparalleled technology for oil, concentrate, or dry flower pens. Providing unsurpassed customer service and expert craftsmanship, Vuber vaporizers use cutting-edge technology, providing a power-packed, smoother vapor with a lifetime guarantee. Experience vaporizing the way it was meant to be. The Vuber way.
Cannabis Confidential with Dr. Dina. Candid.
I want to give you the inside story.
Captivating.
I want to introduce you to my kind and amazingly talented friends.
Compelling.
We get to meet some of the most amazing cannabis activists and warriors around.
Listen in as medical marijuana pioneer Dr. Dina shares never-before-heard stories, chats with cannabis insiders and celebrity friends, and provides invaluable perspective and insight into one of the fastest-growing industries in the world.
I want to share with you what was once confidential information. Let's expose the truth, discuss the issues, and learn the facts.
Cannabis Confidential, only on CannabisRadio.com.
With over 6 years of experience in the industry, New Era CPAs is one of the nation's leading cannabis accounting firms, helping hundreds of growers, dispensaries, and ancillary companies with their tax, legal, and business strategies. New Era CPAs offices cover the West Coast from Seattle to San Diego, and their skilled team is always available to help you take your business to the next level. Visit neweracpas.com for more info and set up a consultation. Welcome to the New Era.
It's time for the Cannabis Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Cannabis Radio News is now available exclusively at CannabisRadio.com. Now your marijuana headlines in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. This is Cannabis Radio News.
This is your Cannabis Radio News for Tuesday, March 8th, 2016. A Massachusetts State Senate committee that visited Colorado to learn about recreational marijuana is warning that the Bay State may not be prepared for pot legalization. In a report released Tuesday, the panel recommends steps be taken should voters approve a likely November ballot question that would allow the recreational use and possession of up to an ounce of marijuana for those 21 and older. The report takes no official stand on legalization, but says taxes included in the plan would likely fall short of covering regulatory and social costs attached to legalization. It also outlines public safety concerns, including the likelihood that a black market for marijuana will persist even if the drug is sold legally. The panel spent time in January visiting Colorado, one of the 4 states that allow recreational pot use. Frustrated over the failure of the whole plant medical marijuana bill, advocates have pledged not only to bring the fight to voters with ballot initiatives, but also to target the jobs of Utah legislators who blocked the bill. Quote, "Parents are going to go after seats. We're going to go after those votes," end quote, said Christine Stenquist, the president and co-founder of Truce, Together for Responsible Use and Cannabis Education. Stenquist said the group's plan to bring forward a ballot initiative in 2016 will not happen. It's too late to meet the requirements for this year. Instead, she says part of the money will go to form a political action committee targeting seats in the Capitol held by Utah legislators blocking medical marijuana. Representative Paul Ray, a Republican of Clearfield, is one of the 8 who voted SB 73 down in committee. He said he understands the frustration, but believes advocates are picking the wrong fight, saying, quote, "Our hands are tied on the federal level and they are working on the wrong level. The fight is on the federal level," end quote. Researchers in Aurora, Colorado will study marijuana use in pregnant mothers. Colorado is one of very few states where researchers can legally conduct the study. Researchers at the University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Campus are studying effects that pot use has on pregnant women and their unborn babies. CU Anschutz says, although physicians tell women they should not use marijuana in pregnancy, it is difficult to provide them with data to support the recommendation. They believe the need for data-supported information grows as marijuana laws change in the United States. After the mothers who took the survey give birth, a sample of the umbilical cord will be taken. Researchers hope the results will give them more information on the link between marijuana use and fetal growth restriction, hypertension in pregnant mothers, stillbirth, spontaneous preterm birth, among other conditions. The Buffalo Cannabis Movement wants the city of Buffalo, New York to decriminalize the possession of 2 ounces or less of marijuana. The idea will be presented to a Common Council committee Tuesday. The Buffalo Cannabis Movement is presenting an initiative to Buffalo's legislation committee called the Buffalo Cannabis Act. The group's idea is to make it legal to grow up to 6 cannabis plants in your home and carry up to 2 ounces of marijuana on you. The group argues that current laws unfairly target minorities who end up in jail for possessing small amounts of marijuana. In 2014, New York City decriminalized small amounts of marijuana, making it so that possessing 25 grams or less of pot would not get you arrested, instead getting an appearance ticket. Colorado Springs City Council will vote on a possible ban to the cannabis clubs on Tuesday. Right now, it's illegal to sell marijuana in the city of Colorado Springs, but not illegal to run a marijuana club. Clubs were created so that people could use pot in a social environment. If leaders vote to ban the clubs, the existing clubs would be forced to close after 5 years. If local leaders don't ban the clubs, new clubs would be able to open. However, the city council wants to enforce new rules and regulations about where those clubs could be located. The existing clubs would be able to stay at their current locations. If the city council decides to not ban marijuana clubs, they want to still discuss possible new rules and regulations about where the clubs could open. City council is considering allowing clubs to be built in industrial areas. In September, the city council put a moratorium on new marijuana clubs for 6 months. It will expire this month. Meanwhile, Denver NORML is spearheading an initiative to legalize such cannabis clubs in the city of Denver. This has been your Cannabis Radio News for Tuesday, March 8th, 2016. I'm Russ Belville.
Great websites today need expert web design and development and need to be e-commerce ready and mobile friendly. But building a marketable and profitable website can be an uphill climb. Ready to make your new website or replace your existing website? Think Orange as the new way to get in the black. Orange Hill Development works with Fortune 500 companies and offer the same top quality development service at a fraction of what other providers charge. Brands like Absolute, Carlsberg, and Nestea trust Orange Hill Development. Find out why you should trust your website with Orange Hill. Contact Orange Hill for a consultation today at orangehilldevelopment.com.
The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
Georgia. Hi, this is Willie Nelson. Alcohol prohibition didn't work in the 1920s, and marijuana prohibition isn't working today. It's time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
Hey everybody, it's Radical Russ here from 420 Radio, inviting you to be like me and get your ink done at Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo, Fort Worth's most female-friendly, clean, sterile, awesome tattoo shop. Thomas and his crew are true artists who can design you a custom piece or use a design you bring in. Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo also offers all styles of tattooing as well as piercings and all-around fun. In the DFW area, stop by Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo and tell them Radical Russ sent you. Trust me, it'll feel awesome.
The world of cannabis is evolving at a frenetic pace. The Russ Belville Show gets behind the headlines to take a deeper look at breaking news in our Cannabis Focus.
Today in the Cannabis Focus, we take a look at an upper Midwestern state that may be one of the least pot-using states in the country, and that would be the state of Iowa. Yes, somewhere between 3.8 and 4.2% of the population of Iowa consider themselves cannabis consumers on a monthly basis. One of the lowest rates you can find. I mean, Iowa is usually down there with Utah and Kansas as far as the fewest amount of people that use cannabis. So you often find when you poll people in Iowa what they feel about cannabis reform, you're going to get some pretty lousy results. But some good news is in a new Des Moines Register Mediacom Iowa poll has found some growing support for marijuana reform in the state of Iowa. 78% of Iowa adults support the use of medical marijuana. 78%. That's up from 58% in 2013. Now, a 20-point jump in just 3 years is pretty remarkable for support. To go from, almost 3 out of 5 to over 3 out of 4 is pretty impressive. 78% up from 58%. However, that's not translating into support for recreational marijuana. In 2013, 29% of Iowans supported recreational legalization. It's up 5 percentage points to 34%. So 5 percentage point gain for recreational, 20 percentage point gain for medical. So we are making inroads here. We are starting to convince people in the heartland of America that this is an important issue. And with 78% support for medical, that bodes well for making adjustments and changes to their CBD-only law. The state's legislators are currently trying to make changes to the CBD-only law to allow more conditions to qualify for it. But that's just nibbling around the edges with this CBD stuff. And I know how so many people dislike the CBD-only laws because they provide some sort of political cover for these legislators rather than going forth with whole plant medication that will actually help people. But from a political standpoint, there has to be an argument made that having the CBD-only laws created what got called medical marijuana, whether it was helping a lot of people or not. And in fact, there's only like 90 people on their medical marijuana program in Iowa for the CBD oil. They want to add epilepsy and like terminal cancer to it as well. But by calling it medical marijuana, it set the frame for people to be hearing on their evening news that the legislature is considering medical marijuana, that medical marijuana is passed, that people are using medical marijuana, even though you and I know it's not what we call medical marijuana, where you're actually getting bud, you're actually using the plant. But the people out there listening to the news don't know it. And like I said, only about 4% of the people in Iowa have any regular experience with cannabis whatsoever. So for a lot of these people who are so completely outside of the cannabis community, to hear medical marijuana over and over on their evening news and to hear that it's helping people on the evening news, I believe has been a major factor in why these numbers have increased. Now, it's also a factor of age. They found that when they asked about medical marijuana, people 65 and older, still there was 68% support. So 2/3 of seniors, 65 and over, support medical marijuana in Iowa. It's 87% for those under the age of 35. 87%. And that break is also very pronounced in the recreational marijuana numbers. Again, 34% favor recreational legalization. Among 65 and older in Iowa, it's 86% opposed. There's only 10% of the people of Iowa who will support recreational legalization if they're over the age of 65. Under the age of 35, there is now a majority, 53% in Iowa, that support the legalization of recreational marijuana. Of course, there will be fewer and fewer of those 65 and older voters as time moves on, and more of those under 35s who keep floating up the demographic chain there. And soon enough, majority support for legalization will happen. We have a great deal of work to do to help to convince people. And we also have to make sure that we can show them that the medical marijuana that they've been talking about isn't what most of us would really call medical marijuana. So the more education we can get out for that, the better. These poll numbers are, again, very good as far as we're finally above 1/3 of the people in Iowa supporting the marijuana legalization. And this, of course, breaks down a lot by Republican and Democrat as well, with the more liberal and more Democratic respondents tending to support legalization, whereas those Republicans are tending to oppose legalization. And I feel that after this election, when we get more states like Ohio, Florida, maybe Arkansas, maybe Missouri passing medical marijuana, those southern states especially, it's going to change a lot of people's minds, and it'll be impossible to hold off on medical.
Well, when the president does it, that means that it is not illegal.
Yeah. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? That's Richard Nixon explaining why presidents can't possibly break the law. It's as poignant and apropos then as it is now, isn't it? Happy 420, Denver. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. We got numbers on donations when we come back.
Ganjapreneur.com, your guide to the cannabis business world. Ganjapreneur.com is a comprehensive resource for cannabis professionals and entrepreneurs. Download the Ganjapreneur app on your smartphone or tablet to catch up on cannabis industry news, scroll through our daily job listings, and learn about successful cannabis companies, executives, and investors. Ganjapreneur.com, helping Ganjapreneurs grow.
The Russ Belville Show reminds you to never smoke and drive impaired. Hang out for a while and share.
The smoke is rising, and the next crop of podcasts devoted to cannabis providers and enthusiasts are ready to be harvested. Welcome to the Cannabis Radio Network, founded by respected rainmakers who have been producing award-winning podcasts for over a decade. Industry headlines, business updates, medical reports, marketing, and e-commerce education rolled up perfectly for your consumption. Let's grow together. The Cannabis Radio Network. CannabisRadio.com.
Don't want to spend money on a night out, but don't know what to do other than watching TV or playing video games? Consider playing guitar, bass, banjo, or mandolin. The instrument will give you hours of entertainment with friends with minimal expense. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today, or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com.
Promoting the end of adult cannabis prohibition is easy because we have facts, science, reason, compassion, evidence, truth, and logic on our side. It's even easier when researchers catalog it all for us. Learn how to gather the facts on marijuana use, arrests, seizures, rehabs, drug tests, and more on this edition of Drug War Data Mining.
Today in the Data Mines, we take a look at a feature on International Business Times that asks, why isn't the marijuana legalization movement donating more money to Bernie Sanders? Of course, there's a big primary today in Michigan and Mississippi for the Democrats, Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders still facing off. And Bernie Sanders, of course, the presidential candidate who has vowed to deschedule marijuana. Not just reschedule it, but to deschedule it, take it off the Controlled Substances Act, and end federal prohibition. Now, last summer, Rand Paul, the senator from Kentucky, he held a fundraiser, and it was at the Cannabis Business Summit in Denver, and the PACs and board members from MPP, the Marijuana Policy Project, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, NORML, the National Cannabis Industry Association, NCIA, contributed $24,500 to Rand Paul, who at the time was running for president in the Republican side. Now he's no longer running for president, but he's gotten $24,500 in donations. So where are the donations for Bernie Sanders? According to the Federal Election Commission records, Sanders has received $1,000 from a handful of MPP, NCIA, and NORML board members by the end of 2015. And of course, on Facebook, Rob Campia announced that MPP's board endorsed Rand Paul in the GOP primary, but there's been no similar endorsement for Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary. Now, I know Rob Campia. He's kind of a libertarian bent, so to see their organization come out strongly for Rand Paul is no surprise, given that Rand Paul is a darling of the libertarians. But MPP is supposed to be a nonpartisan organization, and clearly Bernie Sanders' stance on marijuana is equal to or better than Rand Paul's, even judging by MPP's own scorecard that they've given the presidential candidates. And Bernie Sanders is still in the race. So Rand Paul got $15,500 from Marijuana Policy Project, $9,000 from NCIA, $500 from NORML, and this time around, $250 from MPP and $750 from NCIA. So part of this could be explained by the fact that Rand Paul in the Senate has been the co-sponsor of the CARERS Act, one of those pro-marijuana reform acts in the U.S. Congress. And that's the information, the response given by these organizations, as well as DPA, Drug Policy Alliance. Since 2002, these four groups, have donated less than $1 million to all federal candidates and PACs. For comparison's sake, gun rights spent $19 million on federal contributions. And the beer, wine, and liquor industry, $100 million. Even LGBT groups contributed about $6 million just in 2012 alone. And of the less than $1 million since 2002 that the reform movement has given to the federal candidates, less than $40,000 went to any presidential contenders. Now, again, the big four will tell you that's because the money's better spent on congressmen and senators trying to get legislation passed than it's spent on a presidential candidate who has, at best, just the bully pulpit and executive orders to be able to deal with any sort of drug reform items. But this year, I think, is different. And with 2016 happening, and with Hillary Clinton being reticent to go too far on the marijuana issue, she still says that we need more study. We need more research on medical marijuana. I think it would be in the drug reform group's best interest to drop some of those donations on Bernie Sanders to send a message. Now, whether that message is heard by Hillary Clinton when she's got all those super PACs and Wall Street, money coming her way, the $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000 that the reform orgs could drop on her probably doesn't make much of a difference to her, but it'd make a huge difference for a candidacy like Bernie Sanders. This donation, this political donation power that we are going to have is only going to increase over time as we have more and more states that are legalized. This is why it's so important for legalization to pass and why I get so frustrated by the true legalizers and the stoners against legalization, and I'll explain the difference between the two in the rant today. But why I get so frustrated at them trying to stop attempts to legalize they don't think are good enough. Because any legalization is good enough in that it gives us legality and gives us legitimacy in the political arena. It gives us legal ways to raise and contribute money to candidates who have our best interests at heart. I don't think that money should be behind all our politics. I'd like to see that change, but until it does, that's the reality. When we're a criminal organization, when we are underneath prohibition, it's harder to get the ear of these politicians who oftentimes will reject our donations because, well, they're marijuana and it's crime. But as we become more legit, they'll have less excuse to reject that money and more reason to back our agenda. All right, stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to have our activist agenda. Joy Beckerman from Washington joins us right after this.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Dr. Dabber, hurry! Its temperature is shooting past 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's burning up.
I'm afraid for this little guy, it's just too late.
What caused the problem?
Only Dr. Dabber can maintain the perfect temperature for a smooth-tasting, slower burn. This standard vaporizer lost all of its health benefits, sending it up in smoke.
So you're telling me that most vapor pens burn so hot they produce smoke, not vapor?
Correct. Keep away from those standard vaporizer pens and turn to Dr. Dabber. Doctor's orders.
Less heat, more flavor.
You're listening to the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com, where we don't change our mind on decriminalization during an election year.
NORMAL stands for Responsible Adult Cannabis Use. If cannabis use is causing problems in your life, consider taking a break or seeking medical assistance. Consider ceasing cannabis use if you have a family history of mental illness. Don't drive or operate heavy machinery while impaired by cannabis use. Cannabis use is not without risks, even though the risks are far less than those posed by legal drugs.
Hey everybody, it's Radical Russ here from 420 Radio, inviting you to be like me and get your ink done at Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo, Fort Worth's most female-friendly, clean, sterile, awesome tattoo shop. Thomas and his crew are true artists who can design you a custom piece or use a design you bring in. Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo also offers all styles of tattooing as well as piercings and all-around fun. In the DFW area, stop by Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo and tell them Radical Russ sent you. Trust me, it'll feel awesome.
Activism begins with ACT. The Russ Belville Show features the stories of hardworking grassroots activists working for an end to prohibition in today's activist agenda.
Welcome back, everyone. 32 after the hour, and joining us by telephone, we've got Joy Beckerman, an expert on hemp in the state of Washington. Joy, welcome to the show. Hello, Joy. Are you there? Can you hear me? Oh, we're missing Joy. All right, let's see if we can reach her again. We get making our live call out to Joy Beckerman. She's with Hemp Ace International, well-respected expert in industrial hemp here in the Pacific.
Scott, leave a message at the end of the
Oh, wait a minute. That's not the person we're trying to call. Let's try and get Joy Beckerman's number. We're not trying to reach Scott. We're trying to reach Joy. Maybe that's part of the problem. We'll make sure we're dialing the right phone number here. But that's one way you know that we're doing it live here on the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com. Hemp Ace International is the name of her company. You can find out more by going to hempace.com, or you can email her, joy@hempace.com. She's well-known, like I said, internationally. You can find information on industrial hemp, and she'll be joining us today to talk about the new law that has been passed in Washington State, legalizing industrial hemp. And this is a long time coming. Oregon's had legal hemp for some years now, and Washington finally getting caught up and passing its recent hemp law. We're reaching out to Joy, but I'm not seeing her respond on the phone number that she has given me. Let's see.
Leave a message.
Yeah, that's still not the number we need. Okay, so we will take a break, and I'll see what I can do as far as getting her back on the show. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Ganjapreneur.com, your guide to the cannabis business world. Ganjapreneur.com is a comprehensive resource for cannabis professionals and entrepreneurs. Download the Ganjapreneur app on your smartphone or tablet to catch up on cannabis industry news, scroll through our daily job listings, and learn about successful cannabis companies, executives, and investors. Ganjapreneur.com, helping Ganjapreneurs grow.
You're not high. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
Okay, maybe you're high, too.
Growing green to generate more green.
Hello to all you happy herbalizers, smiling trippy hippies, and everyone who believes in freedom and tolerance. This is The Grow Show, and I'm Kyle Cushman.
From food to fuel, from remedy to resource.
Welcome my guest, Ed Rosenthal, the guru of ganja. Let me ask you, right now I hear your lighter clicking. Are you smoking indoor or are you smoking sun-grown?
What am I smoking? I'm smoking concentrate.
Way to get out of the answer there. So you're truly like the king, right? You just clap your hands and somebody brings you a bowl and you're all set, right?
I wish that were the case.
The Grow Show with Kyle Cushman, only on CannabisRadio.com.
When you are starting up a medical cannabis business, you want a fired-up lawyer who understands the needs of cannabis consumers. The law office of Lauren Vasquez is your fired-up lawyer for the cannabis industry. Visit her website, fireduplawyer.com, or call 1-855-MMJ-LAWS for more information. That's 855-665-5297 for Lauren Vasquez, your fired-up lawyer, or email fireduplawyer@gmail.com.
Activism begins with ACT. The Russ Belville Show features the stories of hardworking grassroots activists working for an end to prohibition in today's activist agenda.
Welcome back, everybody. We've got Joy Beckerman on the line. She's with Hemp Ace International and one of the Normal Women of Washington. Joy, welcome to the show.
Always such a pleasure, Russ. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So we've got you here because there's some news we've got to let our listeners know about, and that is the passage of a new industrial hemp law up there in Washington State. Can you tell people a little about it?
So happy to, and so thrilled, Russ. SB 6026 has definitely passed in Washington State. It's been 3 years running that we have had hemp bills here, and for one reason or another, mostly because they have been competing hemp bills between houses and legislators within the same session. We've not been able to get any passed. This year, wonderful. The WSDA and I essentially double-teamed the legislators to get this through, and I'm just really proud of our Washington State Department of Agriculture, which I refer to as the WSDA. Very proactive, really wanted to get this thing passed through, and I'll tell you, it went through our Senate 48-1, and it went through our House 97-0. So all but Senator Hargrove, and I'm sorry, Senator Hargrove, I just got to call you out because you're the only guy who voted no, and I don't know why, but only one no, Russ.
I wonder what the reasoning could be behind that. So, Joy, is this, I know that states in the past have passed hemp laws, but they were always hamstrung by the language that said, well, once you get a DEA permit, you can grow hemp. And of course, the DEA is not giving any out. How does this law interact with the DEA and all of that?
Thank you so much for asking. And so a little policy background on that is, and you're aware of this on some level, the Agricultural Act of 2014, which most people know is the Farm Bill, went into effect on February 7th of 2014. This is federal. I'm talking federal. It's an amazing historical amendment that was passed and signed into law called the legitimacy of industrial hemp research. Now, of course, you know I've been involved in this movement for 25 years on both coasts. Nobody wants to hear the word research anymore. But what the beautiful thing is that this is not just book research. This is research that also includes marketing. And this bill did a couple of very important things. This legitimacy of industrial hemp research, again, still talking about the Farm Bill of 2014. Number one, it defined industrial hemp for the first time in U.S. history and distinguished it from marijuana. side note, an amazing piece is that there are no carve-outs for the resins of industrial hemp in that definition, which there is in the definition of marijuana in the Controlled Substances Act, which says even in that second sentence that has a little exception for hemp, it still has a parenthetical that says, except the resins therefrom. So this definition of industrial hemp that had never been written in the history of the United States before Section 7606 just says, hey, it's any part of the plant, cannabis sativa L, whether growing or not, with a THC concentration of greater than 3% on a dry weight basis. We'll take that. We will take that. On top of this, allowing state departments of agriculture in states that permit the cultivation of hemp. So they're not saying you have to legalize hemp, but you have to pass legislation that permits the cultivation of industrial hemp. And once your state does that, it can now take advantage of Section 7606, a federal law that says your state departments of ag and institutions of higher education can now go forth to promulgate rules and start what are called agricultural test pilots, or an agricultural pilot program to reintroduce industrial hemp to their state. On top of that, this year, the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2016, which is the federal big giant budget that they have to do every year, and as you are, I'm sure, hyper aware, Mr. Total, know everything there is to know about marijuana, you know that there are some protections that came both 2 years in a row for states using medical marijuana within this budget. And it comes in the form of prohibiting, of course, the Department of Justice and the Drug Enforcement Administration from using funds to go after folks who are acting in accordance with state law. Well, they've done that for medical marijuana. They've done something a little different for industrial hemp with the Consolidated Appropriations Act. And it's been a tremendous evolution this year from the prior. Last year, it said in that same act, it says that the DOJ and the DEA cannot use funds in contravention of 7606. Notice there's a little distinguishment there, because when it's protecting the medical marijuana folks, it's saying as long as the medical marijuana folks are acting in accordance with state law, don't bother them, feds. But for hemp, they said as long as folks are acting in accordance with federal law, don't bother them, feds. So as a result, many states are trying to comply with federal law because we'll get these protections. The additional amazing revolutionary language that was added to that protection in this year's omnibus budget says not only can they not use those funds in contravention of 7606, it says semicolon or, and this is big, Russ, so brace yourself, to prohibit the transportation, cultivation, use, or sale of industrial hemp that has been cultivated in accordance with Section 7606 within or outside of the state in which it is grown. I mean, this is the feds giving a tremendous blessing. And I want to tell you, it was no doubt the great state of Kentucky that lobbied hard to get this language in, because guess what Kentucky is doing under their hemp research program? They are growing fields and fields of low THC, high CBD cannabidiol hemp. I mean, these fields are gorgeous. They look like acres of matured marijuana plants, but they need a legal definition of industrial hemp, and they are being cultivated to process the resins and take them across state lines. And I'll be darned if they didn't get the very protections for exactly what they're doing in that bill. And thank you, Kentucky, because that means that all states that are growing industrial hemp in compliance with Section 7606 can now piggyback off those incredible protections. So I tell you all of that because our Washington state hemp law is indeed a 7606 compliant law. We, of course, will be able to we no longer need permits from the DEA to get, to grow hemp as long as we've got our own state program and it's compliant with Section 7606. What we do need the DEA for is so that if we want to import pedigreed seeds from other countries, unfortunately, viable hemp seeds are still considered to be a Schedule I controlled substance, regardless of Section 7606. So we do need to get what's called a CSIEA permit. Of course, we all thought that it was just the Controlled Substances Act that runs this whole show. Well, even the architects of Section 7606, those legislators did not realize there was a second act. It's called the Controlled Substances Import and Export Act. By the way, Russ, you know everything. Did you know about that act?
No. That's news to me.
So the issue is that even if someone accepts you from the Controlled Substances Act, which Section 7606 opens up with those glorious words, notwithstanding the Controlled Substances Act, but because the architects didn't know about the Controlled Substances Import and Export Act, which is separate from that, they didn't include that language. And as a result, the DEA and the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol requires folks to apply for that permit, which they will issue if you're in compliance with Section 7606, and they've issued several, and then you can get your imported seeds in.
That's remarkable. So we've got the federal government carving out our ability to cultivate and process the hemp plant, but we still need to get their permission to get the seeds for it.
Yes, exactly. And all that's really going to take is, it really just is going to take another law. But I think that what we're focusing on a federal level right now, of course, is the Industrial Hemp Farming Act of 2015, which was refiled from 2013, which is a very short and would help us all act, which takes the same definition of industrial hemp from Section 7606, defines it into law, not as an amendment to a farm bill, but as the actual law of the land, creates that definition and removes it entirely from the Controlled Substances Act. So once we do that, we don't have to worry about anything with regard to the Controlled Substances Act. And if I were a betting woman, I would say that's what our federal government is really focusing on right now, as opposed to maybe trying to, and that it's hard enough just to get a little bill through. If they did a smaller bill about trying to do away with that act alone, better just to try to get industrial hemp out. By the way, I can't help but tell you, you're an Oregon man. Every single, and you pat yourself on the back, Russ Belville, every single federal senator, both of your senators, and every single federal representative in the state of Oregon, and this is the only state that gets to brag about this, has officially co-sponsored the Industrial Hemp Farming Act of 2016. Their sister bills. It's H.R. 525 on the House side, and it's S134 on the Senate side. Conversely, neither of my Washington senators, Cantwell or Murray, have bothered to co-sponsor it, and they've had lots of time. This was refiled, and only 2 of our 8 representatives have co-sponsored the House side. So Oregon's got it going on. The issue is we need more senators. We only have 10 co-sponsors on that federal level. Bernie Sanders, by the way, being the most recent and number 10.
Fantastic. Now we've got about a minute and a half left. Joy, give us again the rundown on the use of hemp resins, because I know there's a lot of interest now in cultivating hemp for CBD properties and for medicinal properties. How would this come into play?
Well, we're not going to be allowed to do that right out of the gate here in Washington. I lobbied very hard for it, and I brought in the Kentucky Department of Agriculture to speak with our Washington state to try to get them to encourage them to do it. You in Oregon, your hemp farmers are allowed to collect plant material and extract. Canadian hemp farmers, for example, where it's been legal since '98, are not allowed to collect plant materials and extract. We have our own unique reasons here. Not me, I want us to do it. But the state has its own unique reasons here why they don't want to extract those cannabinoids. Basically, we've got the legal marijuana market, and we have different standards and testing between state agencies. And believe it or not, the WSDA's testing standards are higher than our liquor and cannabis board. So that's the big thing holding it up. Now, what I'd love to do is come back to do an entire 15 or 20 minutes, brother, on hemp-derived CBD. It's the issue I teach at Seattle University School of Law and to the continuing legal education seminars, and it's just not something that can be wrapped up. But, man, would I love to focus on it at your next chance.
We will absolutely do that, because it's something, a lot of people have a lot of questions. I just got back from Texas where, Alexis Bortel, a little girl who's battling epilepsy using CBD oil and THC in Colorado. But a lot of the politicians in Texas and a lot of the parents there are saying, oh, well, CBD is legal in all 50 states and we can get it from all these companies. And we'll bring you on to get deep into that. Okay, Joy?
I'll be so excited. Russ, I cannot thank you enough for everything you do every day for cannabis. We love you.
Oh, thank you so much, Joy. Appreciate it, and we'll see you in Seattle soon enough.
Can't wait. Bye, brother.
All right. Our good friend Joy Beckerman there, Hemp Ace International. Find her at hempace.com. When we come back, a little radical rant for the stoners against legalization in Arizona.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Ganjapreneur.com, your guide to the cannabis business world. Ganjapreneur.com is a comprehensive resource for cannabis professionals and entrepreneurs. Download the Ganjapreneur app on your smartphone or tablet to catch up on cannabis industry news, scroll through our daily job listings, and learn about successful cannabis companies, executives, and investors. Ganjapreneur.com, helping Ganjapreneurs grow.
You're not high. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
Okay, maybe you're high, too.
Growing green to generate more green.
Hello to all you happy herbalizers, smiling trippy hippies, and everyone who believes in freedom and tolerance. This is The Grow Show, and I'm Kyle Cushman.
From food to fuel, from remedy to resource.
Welcome my guest, Ed Rosenthal, the guru of ganja. Let me ask you, right now I hear your lighter clicking. Are you smoking indoor or are you smoking sun-grown?
What am I smoking? I'm smoking concentrate.
Way to get out of the answer there. So you're truly like the king, right? You just clap your hands and somebody brings you a bowl and you're all set, right?
I wish that were the case.
The Grow Show with Kyle Cushman, only on CannabisRadio.com.
We must wage what I have called total war against public enemy number one.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
That marijuana, pot, grass, whatever you want to call it, is probably the most dangerous drug.
Some think there won't be room for them in jail. We'll make room.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it and didn't inhale.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
Radical Rant.
Once again, we set our sights on the stoners against legalization, and unlike other years, this year we have to specify which state, because there are so many states in play now that feature stoners fighting against legalization, fighting to maintain the status quo. And I want to make sure that we get a distinction taken care of, and that's the difference between a true legalizer and a stoner against legalization. A true legalizer is the guy that will fight for the Jack Herer initiative or Measure 80 or any of these initiatives that are more grassroots, more open as far as how much is allowed and so forth, more liberal, if you will. But they're not against the other one, whatever it might be, more professional, more, less limits and so forth. A true legalizer will put their heart and soul into their campaign, knowing, that they're fighting against the odds, but having a belief that what they're doing is right, and they'll move forward with that. And when they don't make the ballot, they'll go ahead and vote for the legalization that did. So I don't have much grief for true legalizers, right? Where I have a problem is when they become stoners against legalization. Because whether or not you like the California Sean Parker initiative or the Arizona Crimla or the Nevada Crimla or the Massachusetts Crimla or the Maine Crimla or the Florida medical marijuana, the Ohio medical marijuana, the Missouri medical marijuana, the Arkansas medical marijuana, whatever's going on in Michigan right now, whatever you think of those initiatives, all of them are fighting to keep us out of cages at some level. Now, you might not think that a particular initiative keeps enough people out of cages. You might think it's not letting enough people out of cages. You might think the taxes are too high, or the business model is too restrictive, or the hurdles are too high to clear to get into the business. But all of them are legalization. And there is no legalization to date that has been offered that is worse than the status quo of prohibition. And with that distinction made clear, we wade into this story at the Phoenix New Times, written by Ray Stern, entitled Trash Talking Pot Advocate Blasts New Times Reporting on Arizona Marijuana Legalization Initiatives. I'll run it down for you. Basically, he's got a legion of haters, like I do, who are blasting these videos on YouTube and all across social media, claiming that the reporter must have a vested interest in the MPP-backed Crimla in order to be writing so many stories about Crimla. And it's hilarious. I mean, it's hilarious and tragic. The leader, okay, so you know the two players. There's Crimla, which is the MPP group, and they've got tons of money and tons of signatures, and they'll likely make the ballot. They've got conservative language that'll likely pass and win. And then there's the Arizonans for Mindful Regulation, AZFMR, and their leader, Jason Medar, threatens to turn his armies of volunteers against Crimla if his campaign fails to collect enough signatures to make it on the ballot. Last month, they announced they had more than 95,000 signatures. Well, that's nice. That's really good with volunteers, as a matter of fact, but you need 150,000 signatures. And while the paper here says you need 200,000 to ensure you make at least 150, generally with your volunteer signature gathering, your validity rate's around 60%. So let's do the quick calc on that. 150,000 signatures divided by 60% means they really need 250,000. Not 200,000, about 250,000. So 250,000, they're up to 95,000 now, and I think their deadline's in a month or two, couple months. So anyway, not likely they're going to make the ballot. And when they don't, they're going to take their volunteers and turn them against the one that is going to make the ballot. That makes you a stoner against legalization. That puts you in the same camp as Paul Chabot and Kevin Sabet and Scott Gagnon and Patrick Kennedy and the drug czar and the head of the DEA and everybody that wants to keep us in cages. It means you are providing aid and comfort to the drug rehabs and the pill pop pushers and the prison guards and the cops and the drug testers who want to keep the status quo as it is. So it's bad enough when these stoners against legalization, and keep in mind, a lot of these guys that are stoners against legalization make their money thanks to medical marijuana having being legalized, or thanks to the reforms that have led marijuana to become an industry, right? So in a sense, they're taking stoner money to be stoners against legalization, fighting against our own freedom. But what makes it worse is when they cast aspersions on those of us who support any legalization. And this is where these videos come up. This is a fellow named Manuel Chavez. He's a director of technology at Firesight, which is a website making company. And he's got a YouTube channel called Defango, and he wears his company shirt while he's blasting Ray Stern, the reporter, for having a vested interest in Crimla, which is why New Times writes more articles about Crimla than the AZFMR, saying, quote, "Come on, Ray Stern, we know that you're obviously in this somehow. You're probably one of these people that's been donating money to these guys. Your money's in there somewhere. There's no way you would have written this many articles about MPP unless you had a vested interest in it," end quote. Well, Ray, I just wanted to issue my little vote of solidarity with you because I got all sorts of people calling me names and insisting that I must be bought off by the Ohio campaign. They must have paid me to write all those Ohio articles. No. The reason Ray Stern writes articles about Crimla initiative is because it's an initiative that might legalize marijuana and generates news by actually accomplishing things. Signature gathering, press releases, press conferences, donations, polls. If I had $1 for every time someone said I was a paid shill, I'd actually have the money that they think I have for being a paid shill.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
All right, everybody, stay tuned. Hour 2's coming up next. We got more stories for you here from Roll Day Studios. I'm Radical Russ. For everyone here at CannabisRadio.com, we'll see you in a couple minutes. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
It goes down smooth.